Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Taking the Lead, where we get to have fun, insightful discussions with leaders, mostly from the PR world. But if you've seen it before, you know that we don't talk much about PR. It is really about leadership. It is about how you inspire others and create dedicated, passionate followers, and how you lead your boss, if you have one, your peers, your teams, your individuals on your team, and yes, yourself. So that's what we do here, as most of you probably know. Oh, and I'm Ken Jacobs, and most of you know that too. Anyway, we're very excited to bring to you someone I have admired from afar for quite some time. It's Andy Prey, the founder and CEO of Praytell. Previously, he was SVP Digital and Global at RDI Studios and SVP Digital at Reuter Finn, an agency I long admire, and I admire their leadership. And I'm just going to say, welcome to Taking the Lead, Andy Prey.
Good to be here. Good morning. Thanks so much for having me, Ken. This is awesome. I'm a fan of yours, an admirer, and it's just really humbling to be here.
Good. Okay, we're going to dig right in. So, something we ask many of our guests, when you look at the three key leadership tenets that have driven your career, your North Star, what would those three things be?
Well, we were chatting before this, Ken, and you brought up the fact that my dad's a pastor, and certainly good news is there's no sermon coming. But I think I have, and I'm not religious at all, but did learn from my dad the idea of community, building community, the importance of community, and just how important that is. And also just being a servant leader and being somebody who gets their hands dirty and really is there not perfectly imperfect. My dad has bought me. He has a bad memory. He's bought me 3 times the book, The Blessings of Imperfection. So never perfect. I think he's trying to get a point across.
Maybe,
But I
yeah.
learned from my dad that it's really important to have your hands on and be somebody who is doing the work with folks, not just criticizing at the end, but really being there as much as possible. It's hard for me sometimes because I want not to interfere, but I want to be a part of it. So I think sometimes I have to pull back a little bit. But yeah, I think just leadership really requires an understanding of community, the nuance there, the feelings of it, and to read the temperature of it as often as you can, and then just being a part of the community with your hands on and getting work done.
Yeah. And I think you raised, one of the fact that leadership is not easy to do it well, and most of all, do it consistently. It's a big job and it's a challenging job. But if you feel that passion, I would say if you're called to leadership, you're willing to do it. And I think you raised one of the challenges is finding that balance between jumping in, which can have some value sometimes,
Yeah,
and delegating.
yeah.
How do you manage that, finding that balance between jumping in and delegating?
It is a constant challenge, Ken. You know that from your work, and it's because our identity as we come up in our professional lives can be formed around being the rainmaker, the key client guy, the key creative guy, and so you have so much of your identity around the one who got that big idea sold in, the one who came up with the idea, and then all of a sudden you have folks who are far more talented at doing those things. But you still want to kind of have your identity confirmed a little bit, right? You want to have that sustenance. So but for me, really, the joy of the journey. We just turned 10, which feels wild. Is just that I am buttressed and surrounded by such magnificently talented people, and I just think the word trust is probably the word I use in emails. I trust you. I trust you. I trust you. I trust you. And it's not trite. I really do. I trust the folks we have, and I trust them to bring me in at times when they need an ear. They need certainly not wisdom, just affirmation, right, and empathy. And I love playing that role now. And I know that they know when to be a squeaky wheel. They know how much. Sometimes they do me a favor of just bringing me in when they probably got it, but they're giving me a little bit of oxygen. So
That's funny. And I think, a lot of training around leadership. And I always say in every leadership workshop or session or blog or article or podcast, the number one thing is trust. Because without trust, it's not a relationship, and then it's not leading.
Yeah.
So trust, I'm glad you mentioned that. So, for those of you who've checked you out on LinkedIn, and I encourage everyone watching to do so, to find Andy there. Um, your LinkedIn profile says founder, CEO, and optimist. So I'm curious, of course, why you picked optimist. I think founder and CEO is fairly obvious. And how does being an optimist inform your leadership?
Well, I think it's easier than pessimism. I mean, not to take that not to take the
Well,
easy.
for some go to pessim. Oh, for some
Yeah.
pessimists I know, oh, easy.
Oh gosh, can you imagine
Yeah.
how insufferable it would be to be working as closely as we do with folks to have a pessimist? I think maybe you can identify with this, or folks who might watch this. One of my struggles is that my mood can carry, and so if I'm in a bad mood, if I'm stressed, if I'm intense, if I'm feeling really locked in, then everybody can feel that, and that's a pressure. There's a weight there. There's a density of just knowing that, and it's taken me a long time to understand that. Right, that you don't have to yell at somebody. I've never yet dressed anybody down, but if you're intense, everybody can feel it, and there's a responsibility there that, yeah, like I said, it took me a long time to figure out. And so what I've had learned is that by nature I'm an optimist. I'm usually in a good mood, and I like the sunny side. But optimism is far more contagious, and is a better contagion at an agency. It's a better vibe, and obviously, and most of the things we worry about never happen anyways. So I'd rather just see the bright side, and not only hope for the best, but just put good intention into it, good people, and good motivations. Yeah, so optimism to me is it's really Ken hasn't been a choice, frankly. It's just been a genetic disposition and an awareness of just how powerful it is. It's just a very powerful trait, and I don't get to leverage. I don't leverage it as much all the time. Certainly, there are times when the clouds are out, but I try to remember just how it is contagious in a good way.
Well, so as an energy leadership coach, I have to go back to something you said. In reality, everything is contagious, and the leader's energy is absolutely contagious. And pessimism is as contagious
Yeah,
as optimism. So why not choose
sure.
optimism? Because they're going to feel it and be moved by it no matter what. So I think optimism is a higher energy level, and it's one that drives greater success. So, the good news and the bad news, right? The leader's energy is contagious.
Yeah,
If you are living, oh, these are challenging times, and what's going on? Will we have a recession or not? And I'm not saying put your head in the sand, but if that's where you're living, that's where your people will live. If you live, well, things are a little uncertain, let's see how it goes, they'll live that too. Maybe not the best, but certainly better than pessimism. And if a leader lives in, hey guys, we don't know exactly where it's going, we're going to monitor it, but we're smart, we're strategic, we're agile, then they will believe that as well. They will literally feel it without realizing it. So, we're
that's
not supposed to say contagious after March of 2020, but I find it is true with things like that. So let's talk more about optimism.
Ken,
I think, yeah,
very,
please.
I'm so sorry. Very brief, but that does you just did cue something very briefly.
Oh, good. No.
Cue the pandemic. One of the tragedies, many tragedies of the pandemic. So this is a light tragedy. Was the coining of the phrase toxic optimism, and I just think it was
Mm.
so misused and misunderstood, and I found it to be just silly and stupid. And yes, there can be 1% of toxic optimism where it is clinical, and I get it. But I think it was a journalistic phrase that got misused and taken by the masses. And it's like the idea that optimism is toxic and in other shapes and sizes, I just is so silly and unfortunate. And so I'm glad that you are a practitioner of it and advocated for it and a PR person for it, because I think optimism deserves a comeback. It's important.
I agree, that is so true. And it was like clickbait, but
Yep.
the things they were talking about and the things people were saying was not optimism. It was just this shallowness, these meaningless words without energy behind it and without thought behind it. That's not optimism. That was just again, shallowness, for lack of a better term. So I had the same response as you when I saw that. And I know what people were going for, and what they were recommending, was accurate, which is say something meaningful. And I think that is part of optimism. So thank you for that follow-up. So speaking of optimists, you really had I think, go deep into that title quite a few months ago. You had to make the toughest decision any agency CEO makes, any CEO makes, which is to lay people off. So I'm curious, how do you think you did that in a kind way? And how do you support those who remained?
Yeah, I mean, it was the worst. I mean, well, I don't like to talk about it being bad for me. It was far worse for anybody impacted, right? So, like, let's not be silly. I think it was one of the reasons that agencies shouldn't use the word family. I mean, we should use the word community. Great, it's a community, but families don't lay people off, right? There's a difference, and there are business realities. But we didn't have a choice. We killed ourselves over the numbers for about a month and a half, and ultimately just came to a fate that was resigned. And I think what we owed the people impacted was absolute transparency, no sing-songiness, no bullshit. Just this is everything we know to be true, and then with absolute certainty, this is the absolute best we can give to you as a token of our gratitude and our hopes for an on ramp for your next journey. That's what I can do. And I know without a doubt that I can sleep well, knowing that we petitioned our wonderful holding company for, I think, a very generous packages that wouldn't have existed without that advocacy from our teams. And I know that we were 100% clear, transparent, empathetic. And then I don't know. I don't think those folks wanted us to pity anybody. I think they wanted us to be professional and mature, and just to handle it like grown-ups. And I was really proud. And after the fact, I think we have a duty. It's a small world and a small network. We have a duty to make as many introductions as we possibly can. And I know that folks in my network have heard a lot from me, and they will continue to. And that's one of the things that drives me crazy is nobody posts. Agencies don't post on LinkedIn because the trade pubs are going to write about it. Well, that's stupid. If an agency does a layoff, it's okay if a trade pub writes about it, but also put it on LinkedIn and help folks be aware and find some new opportunities. And it drives me crazy. So that's all we can do. We did our best, and I know that folks will have really great second, third, fourth chapters.
Yep. Great. Great. Sounds like you did it the right way. And just to go back to something you said, when the person sharing the news talks about how hard it is for them, how they wrestled with it, and it's like you wrestled with it and you still decided to like, how is the wrestling with it like making it better? And
Yeah.
how is telling me this is tough for you making it better? You still have a job. So that is just, I think there is a rule book of how to do it well, and it sounds like you did it well. And then there's this other rule book out there of how to not do it well, and we see it all over YouTube and LinkedIn. It's like you can see how not to do it. Why are you following in the footsteps of these other CEOs? Mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Great.
so we often ask our taking the lead leaders, interviewees, what agencies, in particular, PR agencies, comms agencies, must do to reach DEI goals. And I noticed that you're one of the very few firms, though there are more and more, who share their numbers in this regard. So I want to ask you two questions. Like, where do you still need to improve as an agency? And how can other agency leaders get comfortable sharing, even if they're not yet at goal? What counsel do you have to make them feel better and encourage them to share the truth about their DE&I numbers?
Yeah, we can improve on our representation at all levels. We can improve on our capacity to make investments when they're not easy, and to truly um, prioritize it in a way that is profound. And we have not had that courage, and as many times as I wish we would have, because many times you just have to kind of press the scale, if you will. We can improve on internal trainings, understandings, manager awareness. We can improve on how we have a culture of belonging. We can it's the longest list of all time, and what I don't like is it turns into cliche, and it turns into kind of like, hey, I've read the books, right? But Ken, yeah, our list is long and exciting. there's the optimism, right? It's an exciting road ahead. We have incredible leadership, folks who have an incredible agenda, and we're making our progress in ways that I think are responsible and material. And in terms of transparency, we've always been an oversharing agency. Shocker, I'm an oversharer. Blessing and a curse.
We're all reeling from that statement. None of us could sense that about you.
No, but it's yeah, it's annoying. But I mean, I think what we're trying to attract candidates that are savvy, really aware. They get it. This is an age of information. The idea that a candidate having opacity to where you are as an agency on these topics is so ridiculous and fundamental to why there is a stagnation. Why would a candidate work anywhere if there's that opacity, right? And so even if the numbers aren't where they want to be, as long as there's a roadmap, there's an agenda, and there's a plan, you would think that a candidate from these communities would at least find some heart in saying, I can be a part. If they want to be a part of that journey and that growth, then they can be that leader. They can be a leader who can be a foundational part of it. That's the worst case scenario, is our numbers aren't where they want us to be. Here they are. Come and join us and help us improve. That's your worst case scenario. That's a pretty good worst case scenario. So I just think the floor is so high. I just don't think it's really a choice, Ken. I don't really understand it I think it's a false choice. It's not a choice. So.
But what can, a lot of agency leaders who are watching and don't have that comfort level yet with sharing, what can you do to encourage them? What can you say to encourage them? Just share it.
I mean, I would, if you're really going to be that calculated, just go back to 5th grade and make a pros and cons column. I can't imagine the pros don't dramatically outweighs the con. We live in a time, there's an expectancy of transparency, an expectancy of accountability, and that starts with just saying where you are. That's where the journey begins. And so I think folks will find it refreshing to not have this like elephant in the room that they can't talk about or isn't there. You know how good it feels to say, no, we're not where we want to be, but look, go to our website, check it out, see our journey. Ken, we were at 40% of our company as our self-selecting as BIPOC employees. We're at 36%, 35%. So we've gone down in key areas. Am I proud of that? Absolutely not. But as a part of our story, it is where we are now, not where we're going to end up. I'm not a martyr about it. That's not the chase here. It is just the truth. So I would think that PR agencies and how they counsel clients would be, maybe that's it, Ken. Do what you would do for your clients. And I can guarantee you most times they would say, be transparent, be honest, be direct, be accountable.
Great counsel. Okay, so I'm not a candidate to work there, but if I wanted to go back into PR, I think it might be there because, among other things, I took a quick list at your benefits, on your website. And I imagine that's partly why you've won Best Places to Work so often, which is how I first became aware of you years ago. And I'm guessing they're far from cheap. So how do you, again, another balance question, how do you find the balance between those kind of benefits and, making your desired profit, whatever that desired level is?
Overshare, I'll go quick. I grew up with chronic pain, and I've had many surgeries, and got bum feet. And I know I've seen my family's gone through so many medical things. So selfishly, when we were a one-person agency and then an 8-person agency, I've never been prouder of being a small Brooklyn Dumbo agency. I've never been prouder of the day we had health insurance for our people. And knowing what that means, and knowing putting people ahead of profit. I remember the sacrifice it took us to do that 10 years ago, and it was a North Star and a lighthouse for us then, and it remains so. I always thought we were the vanguard of benefits. Interestingly, Ken, the last month, we've had key communities at our agency say, hey, we're actually not leading in this and this and this, and let's go. And thank goodness, right? Those are blind spots for me because I just didn't have my lived experience there. And so Naria Fraser reminds me our mission is to lead. And that means that sometimes our profit will go down a little bit. But ultimately, I don't think that in 20 years, I'm going to look back and think, oh my goodness, I'm so glad that we made 21.6% profit in 2023. I can't imagine that will be a legacy that I give a shit about. So I think, ultimately it's a really easy decision, and hopefully we can continue on as we grow into places I never expected. But yeah, it's a core foundation, maybe from selfishness of just wanting folks to have medical experiences that are covered and have stresses that are relieved. But it is not easy, and it is a rapidly evolving landscape, and we are being pressed to evolve in a way that I appreciate, but is certainly going to require some temerity.
Yeah. And thank goodness you've created an environment where people in the community will come to you and say, we could do better here, we could do better there. Not I'm leaving to go somewhere that's better, but we could do better, go, as I think you said. So that there's something I think you've created, I imagine, in your leadership style, in your openness, maybe in your optimism, where they would rather bring it to you than just talk about it, or leave, and then it's too late for you to fix it.
I
So
hope. I hope.
I'm going to guess you've created that. This has been even more joyful, even more fun than I expected. My expectations were high, knowing what I know about you. I also want to point out, for those of you who missed it, I have to share it, that Andy's dad was a pastor, Pastor Prey. How perfect is that? How great is that? Anyway, I'm going to invite people to find you on LinkedIn. I hope that's okay. But now it's out of the bag. Find Andy Prey on LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn. There are many Ken Jacobs, but I think I'm the only one that has PCC and some other initials after my name. So if you're watching this, if we haven't yet connected on LinkedIn, please link in with both of us. Thanks again to Andy Prey. And until next time, everyone, keep on taking the lead.